This meeting is being recorded.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to the April 24th monthly CBAC community update on reparations. Thank you for joining us tonight. Concerned Black American Citizens is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization. I guess I should go to the website, let you check that out. But and what we do is we do community organizing. We also train field organizers or train organizers in the field. And we also push policy. We do a lot of things. CBAC was formed back in 2019. Basically, as part of the reparations movement, we got involved in a letter writing campaign during the Byron Allen and Comcast battle, and were seeking to get various NAACP branches and other stakeholders, legacy holders, to write in support of Byron Allen in his case, which was challenging one of the civil rights legislation. From there, have done a lot of organizing in South Carolina, marches on Washington, you name it. I've done it all. I started out as a volunteer for the Democratic Party for a number of years, and then became a reparationist. And here I am, and basically trying to spread the message, educate the community, activate people in the community as well as our politicians, and help them understand what reparations is and is not, and how policies have been constructed to harm our community, and what we need to do to change things. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and pop into the presentation. Khaleef Alexander is our host. Khaleef is out of Philadelphia, and I'm going to throw it over to him in a minute and let him introduce himself. And we'll have a minute after the presentation. This is going to be a short meeting, and let everybody go around and introduce themselves, tell us where they're from, what they're working on in their areas. So let's see. So reparations, as we know, is a journey. It is not something that just started yesterday. In fact, it started with Callie Guy House, an ex-slave from Nashville, Tennessee, who started the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association. And she was able to amass a membership of hundreds of thousands of paid members who were fighting for actually the $68 million in tax money that the government had collected after the war. And she wanted that money for the elderly former slaves. Unfortunately, she was unsuccessful in that bid, and she was brought up on mail fraud charges. And, you know, there's a story, and I encourage everyone, obviously, to learn more about Callie House. What are reparations and why are they owed to freedmen? I know a lot of us in the audience know this, but just in case, these are recorded and like to have this information for our audience. But the lineage wealth gap has been projected for our community to be currently at about 20-1, and that freedmen's average household wealth is projected to fall to 0 by 2053, and that was before the pandemic. And COVID revealed many of the vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining, where we saw that we were dying at 3 times the rate of white Americans. And also we know that more than 50% of the homeless and incarcerated are American freedmen, and yet we are less than 15% of the population. Again, what reparations are not. Reparations are not infrastructure spending. They are not housing vouchers. education reform, prison reform. Reparations are cash, direct cash payments, and land. I'm going to just skip ahead to why orange is the new black. And this basically is talking about the fact that everyone else seems to be getting policy from our government except for Black Americans or American freedmen. And so what we see essentially is, if we look at the actions of Congress, look at the those in office who are there supposedly to advocate for us, have pretty much failed us. Government policies have failed us. The failure of the Freedmen's Bank, the Freedmen's Bureau, and these policies such as the drug war, mass incarceration, all of these are what we can refer to loosely as structural violence. And, you know, as I showed you, that previous chart is an example of structural economic violence, as is the chronic unemployment that is experienced in our community, which, you know, our government has essentially always been presented with projections about the plight of employment and entrepreneur or business formation in the Black community, but it's just never had the political willpower to do anything about it. And in fact, has more often than not pursued policies that are in direct opposition to the best interests of Black Americans. We have been blatantly ignored despite the devastation from COVID. These are just a few of the policies. I was hoping I wouldn't have to update this, but unfortunately I have things to update. I believe now we are really at a total of 14 billion here. I believe this number went up, and I know it's 14 billion for the Ukraine. And now Biden is asking for an additional 800 million. Here we have $900 a month monthly payments for transgender and non-binary. Then over here we have 10 million given to Asian American communities, and more gender specific and or sexual orientation specific policy. Another thing that I was looking for a clip that I couldn't find is the fact that HBCU funding fell significantly. But not only that, Biden and Congress have allowed HBCUs got $2 billion. It was down from the $45 billion that had been allocated under Trump, down to $2 billion. Hispanic universities, I don't know if you realize they had those, but those got 11 billion, and Asian American concentrated, which means basically if you have 15% or more of your students in that ethnic group, you get that money. So they got 11 billion for the Hispanics, 5 billion for the Asians, and 2 billion for the group that built the country and put the Democrats in all three houses of government. So Biden has not had our back. And then another insult, to add more insult to injury, we have a projected wealth gap of over $100 trillion, estimated at approximately 350,000 per descendant if we were to close the lineage wealth gap. Well, we see here that Biden's administration and Department of Justice is contemplating, I don't know if this has happened yet, but the fact that they are even on the path to pay $450,000 to each person in the family who came to the country illegally, was told not to come, came anyway, were separated from their children, and our own ACLU is suing our government on their behalf. And that's the kind of advocacy that we are getting from our government. Um, and so this is bringing me around. This is still under the topic of Orange is the New Black. We had an event in 2016 where Obama changed or removed the word Negro and Oriental and changed it to African American. So we now know that that has opened the floodgates and has a possibility of jeopardizing our justice claim. Thankfully, in California, that didn't happen when they voted not only for the Upward Mobility Act, which it moved along, it hasn't passed, but it basically clarifies who is an African American or Black African American, who is an African Black. But they also on March 29th made a decision to base reparations on lineage. And I'm hoping that this is queued up in the right spot. Oh my gosh, it is. Okay, so this is great. So what I'm about to show you, let me mute myself for a minute. Wait, oh my gosh, what did I do? I apologize. I just
because all you're doing is.
But what I'm about to show you is a clip from the hearing, the California hearing, where we had a constitutional scholar and dean of the UC Berkeley School of Law tell us why it is that we cannot include all Black people in our reparations claim, that we must base it on lineage in order for it to not be challenged by the Supreme Court. So I'm going to attempt to play that little clip. I hope I've got it in the right place.
What are your thoughts on?
Oops! Oh my gosh, they didn't do it. Let me see. Here we go.
Who were emancipated in 1865 by virtue of the Emancipation Proclamation. And so I guess my question to the two panelists, although I know we're mainly talking about a historical overview of the reparations movement, but to your points about that you
Much longer.
This is painful. I'm sorry, but it's worth it.
Link your legacy,
I think.
To the end. As the party, I don't know. I'm just the laws and the.
Now, where does he start? Oh, here we go.
Action has to be necessary.
To have Dean Chemerinsky here with us, and without further ado, Dean Chemerinsky, you may start your expert testimony when you're ready.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. My honor to be able to testify before you. I'm here to address one question. How to structure reparations in the way most likely to be upheld by the courts. My conclusion is that reparation is most likely to be upheld by the courts if it's structured in a race-neutral fashion. That is, most likely to be upheld by the courts if reparations are for those who were descendants of slaves rather than for all who are Black. In the United States, the current constitutional law, and in California under Proposition 209, laws that give a preference on the basis of race are either inherently suspect or perhaps per se illegal. And therefore the question is, how can reparations be structured in a way that would get through judicial review? Let me talk about two sources of law, the California Constitution and then the United States Constitution, to explain why I've come to this conclusion, then briefly respond to some of the questions that you might have about the position I'm taking, and then answer anything that you want to ask of me. The first source of law that you need to focus on is the California Constitution, what was commonly referred to as Proposition 209. It was called the California Civil Rights Initiative. It says the state of California and all its political subdivisions cannot discriminate or give preference on the basis of race in education, employment, or contracting. And so if reparations are given on the basis of race, that anyone who meets the definition of being Black is entitled to reparations because all have suffered from the legacy of slavery, I don't think it could survive a challenge under Proposition 209. Now, Proposition 209 is limited to education, contracting, and employment. And if the reparations were not in those areas, then Proposition 209 wouldn't be a problem. But if it's in education, or if it is in contracting, or if it is employment, then anything that is deemed as a preference on the basis of race is per se impermissible. This is different than what I'll talk about in a moment, the United States Constitution, where there is the possibility of racial preferences being constitutional. Under the California Constitution, they're not. There's relatively little case law about Proposition 209, but that which exists broadly defines what is preference. It would be hard to imagine that there'd be a reparation system that was racially defined that wouldn't run afoul of this. Now, as I said in my introduction, if this were defined as a benefit for those who are descendants of slaves, it would certainly largely overlap with race, but it would not entirely overlap with race. There are Blacks who are not descendants of slaves. There's a very small population that were enslaved that wouldn't be Black. So I think there'd be a strong argument based on Proposition 209 that limiting reparations to those who descendants of slaves would not run afoul of Prop 209, whereas if this is defined in a race-based manner, then I think Proposition 209 would be a substantial problem. But assume that Proposition 209 wasn't a problem. Imagine this wasn't reparation about education, contracting, and employment, in which case it would be entirely outside the scope of Proposition 209. There is still the United States Constitution. And the Supreme Court has said now, for over 30 years, that racial classifications benefiting minorities, just like racial classifications that disadvantage minorities, are highly suspect. The Supreme Court has said that racial classifications benefiting minorities, like those disadvantaging minorities, must meet strict scrutiny. As I'm sure the Commission knows, strict scrutiny means that the government action has to be necessary to achieve a compelling government purpose. And the Supreme Court has been very restrictive as to what counts as a compelling purpose in this context. Quite relevant to your Commission, the Supreme Court has said that remedying the history of caste discrimination is not a compelling purpose sufficient to justify remedial action. There was a Supreme Court case, Wygant versus Jackson Board of Education. The Jackson, Michigan school system had recently hired a number of Black teachers when it needed to have layoffs. It decided to hire white teachers with more seniority. Their argument was that this was to remedy a long history of race discrimination. They also said how important it was to provide role models for Black children in the schools. The Supreme Court declared this unconstitutional. The court's opinion was explicit that there cannot be preferences based on race on the grounds of remedying the history of discrimination. Or there's the case J. Croson versus City of Richmond. Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the old Confederacy, set aside 30% of its public works monies for minority-owned businesses. They did so because even though at that time Richmond was a city that was more than 50% Black, racial minorities and Blacks were receiving only about 1% public works contracts. But the Supreme Court declared this unconstitutional. And the court said the long history of race discrimination, including in Richmond, Virginia, didn't justify the preference that was given on the basis of race. There is, as of now, only one area where the United States Supreme Court has allowed race-conscious remedies, and that's in the area of higher education. In a series of cases, the Supreme Court has said that college universities have a compelling interest in a diverse student body. The college universities may use race as one factor among many in admissions decisions to enhance diversity to benefit minorities. This was initially articulated by Justice Lewis Powell in an opinion in Regents University of California versus CBAC in 1978. It was reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in 2003 in Grutter versus Bollinger, and then reaffirmed most recently in 2016 in Fisher versus Texas at Austin. From the Fisher litigation, the Supreme Court made clear that college universities could use race as a factor in admission decisions only if they could prove there was no other way to achieve diversity. Now, it's worth noting that states can do what we thought of as protecting more rights than the U.S. Constitution. So California can prohibit affirmative action even though it would be permissible under the U.S. Constitution. That's exactly what Proposition 209 does. But even as to this one area where racial classifications benefit and already have been allowed, the law, I think, is about to change. The Supreme Court has granted review in 2 cases for next October, one involving Harvard University and one involving the University of North Carolina. And the issue in those 2 cases is whether the Supreme Court is going to overrule the earlier decisions allowing affirmative action. Why 2 cases? Well, the Constitution applies only to the government. Private activities don't have to comply with the Constitution. Harvard is a private university. But Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act applies to entities that receive federal funds, including private entities. Harvard obviously receives federal funds. So the issue in the Harvard case is whether or not race-conscious affirmative action in admissions violates Title VI. In the University of North Carolina case, is whether it violates equal protection. It is impossible to count 5 votes on the current Supreme Court that would uphold the Harvard and North Carolina affirmative action programs. Chief Justice John Roberts has been outspoken in his opposition to all forms of affirmative action. And parents involved in community schools for Seattle Schools Number 1 in 2007 explicitly took the position that the Constitution requires that the government be colorblind. Justice Thomas and Alito have taken the position, and with 3 additional conservative justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, hard to imagine the Supreme Court doing anything but reversing those earlier decisions. Well, what does that mean in the context of the discussion of reparations? If reparations are framed in a race-based manner, then they would have to meet strict scrutiny, necessary to achieve a compelling purpose. And remember, the Supreme Court has said remedying a history of discrimination is not regarded by the court as a compelling government purpose. And so I think it would be very hard to convince this Supreme Court or lower courts following Supreme Court precedent that a race-based reparation program would be constitutional. I think the best hope with regard to the Supreme Court is a program that is facially race neutral, that being framed in terms of a benefit for descendants of slaves would be much more likely to be upheld. There are precedents for reparations, as this commission well knows. For example, there was the reparations provided to those who had been in Japanese internment camps. But it's important to note that that was based on people who had suffered a particular injury, and they were each given $20,000 and an apology during the Reagan administration. It wasn't anyone who was of a particular race. I think it would be hard to convince this court that a race-based program, net strict scrutiny, was constitutional. On the other hand, what's more encouraging to me, that I cannot think of any instance where the Supreme Court has struck down a race-neutral law on the ground that it has a benefit or even a targeted benefit for minorities. As an example, some states have adopted admissions programs where they take top 10% of classes across the state. And this was undoubtedly adopted to benefit minorities and it had the effect of benefiting minorities. And yet the Supreme Court, at least called dicta, has indicated that would be constitutional, even though the purpose, the effect would be to benefit minorities. So I come to you as the messenger. I am not defending the law as set out by the Supreme Court. It is certainly not the law as I would want it to be. And I completely understand the benefits with regard to praising reparations and framing it in terms of those who are Black. I am simply addressing the question, what is most likely to be held by the courts? Let me just respond to 3 things that might be in mind, and then I'll take your questions.
I want to pause. I want to make sure we let the people in who were trying to get in.
One thing that might be in mind is there is a tremendous difficulty in proving that someone is a descendant of slaves. This will be very under-inclusive in that way. As this commission knows so well, records are incomplete. And so the cost of what I'm suggesting is that many who are deserving will not get benefits. And I think if you go in the direction of providing that those who are descendants of slaves would get reparations, how to deal with the incomplete records and the lack of documentation becomes very important. A second concern is, as articulated by the prior speaker, all Blacks in this country have suffered from the legacy of slavery. All should therefore be able to benefit from reparations. I think that is a compelling argument, but I don't think the United States Supreme Court would find that to be a compelling argument. If you look at the cases I mentioned, where the court says remedying the past history of discrimination is not a compelling interest, I don't see a way of persuading the current Supreme Court than the lower courts that. And a final criticism of what I'm suggesting is that there's still the purpose of benefiting Blacks. The effect is still to benefit Blacks. Might a court not strike it down on that basis? And yes, I think that's a risk, even of a reparations law that's framed in terms of benefiting descendants of slaves. But I think it is far more likely to be upheld than a law that is framed just in terms of race. So again.
All right, I'm going to stop it there because I don't want to hear any more of that. And I'm sure you can probably hear the washing machine. I apologize. I'm going to move to another location. But anyway, obviously that is a very important clip. Very important in terms of policy, but important in terms of, what I've been talking about prior to the clip about African American and why the Freedmen designation is something that we definitely be working to teach people more about. But the Freedmen designation, of course, is the, I don't know what happened. What happened to that? But the Freedmen designation, of course, is the federal class that we were designated with upon emancipation from slavery. And I think the dean made it clear that were we to pursue any type of policy, or as we've seen in the past, more recently, the Black Farmers Bill being held up, that when we pursue policy based on race, we are going to be challenged on that. And so that's why the American Freedmen designation is one that we are truly embracing, and we have Concerned Black American Citizens has launched a campaign, the National Committee for the Office of Freedmen Affairs. If we take a look at disparity studies, which are done by law to do an analysis of how minority women in business programs and other affirmative action programs, healthcare delivery systems, and analyze the disparities. And what we'll see is decade after decade, we are discriminated against within those programs. And so as a result of that, we believe that these disparities, these tests, just like the dean was just saying, that these programs exist, these affirmative action programs exist, but when we look a little closer at the numbers, they reveal how significantly discriminated against we are in these programs, and how we are really not participating at all, and that this has been going on for decades. And because the Freedmen designation is race neutral, it fits the bill, I believe, that where we could create or go back to the structure of the Freedmen's Bureau, and we would be able to carve out our share of the state resources. And this is just the call out that we did for 15 billion. And I'm going to turn it over to Khaleef and let him tell you more about the campaign and the news about the candidates that we've had adopt this platform. So Khaleef, I'll throw it on over to you, the young gun.
So greetings everyone. Let me get my camera right. All right, there we go. So yeah, so I just want to pull this up. I'm gonna actually drop this link in the chat. This is a piece that I did on Medium. We also emailed out a statement to a bunch of people, and pretty much this is our statement on the Office of Freedmen Affairs. And what I'll do also at the same time is, I'm gonna pull something else up also. So pretty much this is our platform on the $15 billion to invest in the Office of Freedmen Affairs. And people are probably wondering, like, where did we get the $15 billion from? It comes from, it actually comes from, 1%. The idea comes from 1% of the American Rescue Plan, which is $1.5 trillion. So we believe that, we're 1% of the American Rescue Plan for Black American freedmen. And we believe potentially in the second year, we can get the increase up to 30 billion, which would be 2% of that. We use the hashtag 51. That's kind of like our signal to identify, people who are in support, and kind of sort of, just to go in, concerned Black Americans, citizens, we represent Black Americans who are advocating for the establishment of county level administrative office of Freedmen Affairs and the transformative Black American agenda. We all know that, organizations such as NARC and COBRA, they've received funding from the MacArthur Foundation to not lobby Congress for cash reparations and other things. And that's one of our biggest things, like Dawn was speaking upon, but really now we have to get into a phase of lobbying, and that's what's going to be very vital. So the idea of the $15 billion plan is to now create a plan, which we have, and then also now begin to lobby the plan to politicians so that we can begin to have some type of some type of communication with the politicians, but also at the same time, we have an agenda that they have to adopt: the new big oil, the new big pharma. Dawn already touched on Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, but this is just touching on him, speaking on lineage-based reparations, meaning not based on one's color. We all focused on that, which is that's our ticket, quite frankly, focusing on lineage, focusing on being freedmen. We understand that race is something that is deemed as unconstitutional, and we've come to that conclusion. So I really want to actually get to the good parts of this stuff. So following the American Civil War, Congress established the Freedmen Bureau, 1865 to 1872, during Reconstruction period, to provide practical aid to 4 million newly emancipated Americans in their transition from slavery to freedmen. Headed by General Oliver O. Howard, the same guy from Howard University. The Freedmen's Bureau could be considered the nation's first federal welfare agency. Despite the handicaps of inadequate funds and poorly trained personnel, the Bureau built schools and hospitals and gave direct medical assistance and education to more than 1 million freedmen. And this was the resolution, kind of sort of like, this is kind of the angle in which we're looking to create, but we're basically just playing off the past during the Reconstruction era. And that it was an act to establish an administrative office to watch over the execution of all laws, proclamations, and military orders of emancipation, or in any way concerning freedmen, and generally by careful regulations and the spirit of the Constitution to protect these persons and the enjoyment of their rights, to promote their welfare, and to secure them and their posterity. I might have got that word a little wrong. The blessings of liberty.
Austerity.
There we go. Austerity. There we go. You know, they talking like they're in old Shakespeare language in these times, so they get it right. To enforce all laws enacted to protect freedmen from all harms, foreign and domestic, and to delineate and count freedmen population across local, state, and federal data, statistics, recommendations, and reportings. And this is basically the same stuff that we're talking about in today's time, but it's key because that was then the initial bill. So all we did was we just took a lot of information from that and decided to create something new for this 15 billion. So our goal is to create a national committee for Office of Freedmen Affairs. And that's what kind of these meetings are about. We host these meetings once a month. We host weekly meetings with our groups. We also host organizing meetings because we have to get people activated. And one of the ideas behind this Office of Freedmen Affairs is kind of like to be the prologue to reparations. So you establish something so that you can get, you know, cash in hand in people's hands faster, but also an opportunity at infrastructure. And that 15 billion is going to be big because I'm gonna go to something else in a minute. But so we're calling on Congress to make a major investment of $15 billion to reconstruct the other America. The funding will be used to reestablish and staff the Office of Freedmen Affairs, which will lead to further developments to close the American Freedmen lineage wealth gap at 15 trillion. The office will be empowered to collect specific lineage-based data on business ownership and employment, which is key, and I'll get into that, for the purpose of earmarking federal contracts for the Office of Freedmen Affairs. They probably wondering, like, earmarking is in the contracts is key. So we're looking to say, if someone has a painting company, just say a small-time painting company, the Office of Freedmen Affairs job is to research their company, pair that company up with a contract from the federal government or the municipal government, or just a government agency in general, so that they can have a commercial contract, a private company having a commercial contract. So we want these earmarked dollars to go to these Black-owned, freedmen-owned companies so that these companies can have more employment. Most Black businesses only have 1 or 2 employees, but with the influx of capital coming to Black-owned businesses, freedmen-owned businesses, what that does is it now gives us the opportunity to, 1, not only just hire more people, but hire people from our own community, but then 2, have businesses that expand and become big business. So now we don't have to worry about, you know, the only businesses that are really in the community, hair salons and eateries. Now we can be able to start seeing people having toothpaste companies and, you know, toothbrush companies, different things of that nature. So I'm just giving out different examples of kind of how this thing is designed to go. But again, if you're in the labor industry, construction, painting, you're even talking about maintenance, various different fields of that nature. Basically, the objective is to stir the contracts towards you so that now you're able to hire more people in the community. But then also the job is to capture lineage-based information on the people there, which is key because ultimately we want to be able to set a ground so before the reparations come, we can actually start to already identify who's who, which is going to be one of the biggest hurdles, but we all know who's who. So that's kind of, you know, I would say that's like the major thing that I really wanted to highlight from the 15 billion, and really just going to the freedmen history component, because another component of it is really being able to get American freedmen history into the schools. See, now they have CRT, which is something that, you know, when you really look at it, it's not actually focusing on American freedmen history and this is also another avenue for us to get our story told correctly and us telling our story, us being the narrators of our story. So, with the development of the Office of Freedmen Affairs, this is also going to be another great implementation, another component of implementing American freedmen history into the schools and into these different various pieces of legislation. But I digress on that. And like I said, I sent this the article that I wrote in the chat, pretty much, just talking about, the different acts that we were excluded from: the Homestead Act, the robbery of the Black farmers, the GI Bill, the Federal Housing Administrative Act, known as FHA, redlining. These are all causes of the funds that we are owed, but then also the causes for the Office of Freedmen Affairs. And then, we just want to go on a journey. We always want to tell people a journey, because a lot of people have a conflation on the information of the story on like the journey of reparations and, quite frankly, what it's meant to be. So, we just really, I really focused on, the General William Sherman, one of the first people who came up with the idea and the concept of the 40 acres and a mule. Kali Guy House, we covered her already in the beginning, but she's kind of like the queen of that movement. Queen Mother Ali Moore, who's kind of like the queen and used the term descendants of American slaves. She's like the more modern day, if you will, to what we see. Martin
And
Luther King.
Let's pause there for a minute on Queen Audley Mother Moore, because she is often held up by Pan-Africanists, organizations such as NCOBRA or IBW 21st Century as their matriarch, but they are pushing for all Black Lives Matter reparations, which we just played the clip of the Supreme Court scholar who's actually argued before the Supreme Court, and he's told us that lineage reparations is the way to go. And you won't hear that from most Pan-Africanists. But then we go back in history and we find written in her own words in a 15-page pamphlet that even though she was at the same time a member of some Ethiopian group or liberation group, she was calling for reparations specifically for American Negroes descended from chattel slavery and Jim Crow. So I think it's important to understand that what we're fighting against out here. Martin Luther King, interesting, his name is here because as beloved as he is today, he was not beloved back then. And it seems in hindsight that some of his greatest foes were people who looked just like him. And we find that today we are faced with the same types of obstacles. People who look like us are us, and people who look like us who are not us, but either, just not working for our betterment. In a lot of cases, I feel affirmative action, everyone knows it doesn't work for us. We do know that we get something out of it. And I think the people who are getting something have been complicit and complacent. We have firms that are doing studies every year, every 3 to 5 years. And
real quick, before we get into the study, I know we're going to get into the study next.
Well, we're not going to get too deep into that, but Dr. Claude fits in well here.
Yeah, Dr. Claude, affirmative action, right? The man who created the affirmative action in Florida in the 1970s, president of the Powernomics Corporation of America, and kind of sort of, I like to say it's kind of like the godfather of the modern day reparations movement. And a lot of the stuff that we see today, as far as us becoming bottom cash, we can go on and on about some of the work that Dr. Claude is. Yeah, the clip is good. You're right. I'll probably get to the clip at the end, but I really want to focus on when he said you will be buried under racial groups, language groups, religious groups, and gender groups. which is key because we see that now because everybody, kind of like what Don was just saying, is that everybody can now be considered as a minority. And that kind of takes away from affirmative action, whereas though it doesn't actually make sense to us. So when we go back and we start talking about that 15 billion, that's kind of a way whereas though we can now earmark our way into legislation and policy in the federal government, state government, municipal government. And kind of sort of his transformation that Dr. Claude Anderson was talking about was eliminating the barrier of race and taking it to a next step. The next step is now lineage. Now, real quick before I go to this next part, the $15 billion plan we have now shipped around to different candidates who are running for office and people who are currently in office, whether it be us, sending out a delineation bill, or whether it be us sending out a development of an Office of Freedmen Affairs. We've basically been working and communicating with different politicians behind that. So here in Philadelphia, I would say there were a few candidates running for office in the congressional race. I reached out to every candidate, and one candidate got back to me in regards to adopting the plan. The candidate is named Alexandra Hunt. Now, this is the incumbent who's running against her. His name is Dwight Evans. Well, she's running against him, rather. So I told you we came out with the $15 billion plan. Now, you see that say 51 billion. I'm just saying, I may be a conspiracy theorist, who knows? But I'm just saying that might be 15 reverse. Don't mind me. Now, when the average Philadelphian or when the average person reads this, they'll say, wow, he's investing $51 billion to propose to fight gun violence in Philadelphia. I mean, for people in Philly, that sounds great. But then when you actually go through it, and I'm not going to go through it too much, but I'll just say this. We made a proposal. We made a proposal for $15 billion to invest specifically into freedmen communities. And we got that number again, 1% of the American Rescue Plan, but then also the $14 billion plus that the Ukrainians have received. This bill is for $51 billion, and this is a proposal because they're utilizing him in Philadelphia's plight for the gun violence aims of the entire country. So they're stirring the 51 billion, but out of the 51 billion, $1 billion is going to go towards the put more police on the street, and then the other 40 billion is going for workforce and job development, i.e. summer camps and different things of that nature, which is great because we already had those things around, but that's for everybody. That's not what we're not talking about the same thing. But I just want you all to see that, you see how we came with the $15 billion plan? April 21st is when this happened. Now they're coming with the 51 billion. The Democrats are waking up. They see what's going on. So now this is us challenging them because they're now noticing what we have going on. So I just wanted to say that, and pretty much, yeah,
just like
it's an interesting thing.
Interjected on the Queen Audley Moore, I want to also interject here on the what was I going to say, on the 51 billion and the, just the pandering that, that we're going to start seeing from the Democrats. And, just the ability to push them on policy. I think this is, it's clear that, like you said, they are listening, but we have to make sure that we educate the public on what he's really shooting for, and make the comparison known. And that's that's my fear about the talk of reparations as it becomes more commonplace. People are going to be bandying about the word, which is why we need to rush to inform people exactly what it is that it means.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think now, we've been going in for about an hour. I think now is about the perfect time to try to get a concept and a dialogue and a bill from, the different people we have in the space. Because I'm curious, as we've been seeing different people coming out of reparations. Me and you have been saying for months that this is going to happen if people do not reach out to the candidates in their home locations and in their towns, because now reparations is like popcorn. People now say, wow, if I try to say I'm running on reparations, I might be able, but don't nobody know what reparations is but us. So I want to throw that dialogue to the floor. I know a couple people have been seeing, candidates running on reparations. So yeah, let's have a dialogue. Anybody have, anything they would like to throw in there, raise your hand and we go from there. I see you, Amaru.
Yeah, peace, bro. I think it's imperative for us to continue to hone in on American Freedmen as our status, as well as the description of our lineage, because without it, it opens the door for all these tether groups, which we have been seeing. We now see this Reparation Pact, which is a group of Latinos, and it looked like a Nigerian and maybe a Kenyan by their last name, who are, trying to, shoehorn in their way in this reparation. So when we really get this delineation, when we really stand 10 toes down this American Freedmen, it will shut the doors on all of these groups trying to shoehorn their way into our justice claim. I've been looking around here in my city. As I prepare for Juneteenth, I'm gonna make that, that's simply gonna be American Freedmen Day, because all the literature that I'm gonna pass out, the petitions that's gonna be signed by everybody who comes up in there for delineation, Office of Freedmen Affairs, as well as educating our people here in the state of Kentucky about the Freedmen Bureau, about American Freedmen, and so we can solidify. So like you said, once we attach ourselves to this American Freedmen, we will become a line item in legislations. They cannot deny our lineage the justice that is due, because we have historical records, precedents that's already done came before us. So we just gotta stay on this American Freedmen.
Definitely. You're right on that one. Anybody else have any questions, dialogue, bills, anything that they heard? I'm definitely curious.
Don't be shy.
What's the stance on HR 40? We're not supporting HR 40, right, because of the lack of specificity.
Yeah, I mean, HR 40, obviously we tried to get some edits. Actually, CBAC was able to get an edit or two in, but the edits that we submitted were more administrative edits, but they administrated it to death. They added a whole nother layer of bureaucracy in. So now they added an executive director. They increased the size of the board. It's a hot mess, I think. And most critically, they destroyed any hope of transparency when they said that they were not going to make their deliberations public. So no, they keep threatening that they have enough votes, but they don't. They don't. And you know why I find it interesting? I saw the last hearing. I actually attended the hearings in DC, but I watched the hearing, the last hearing when they had the hearing in the Judiciary Committee. And what did they talk about? What I found interesting is that I feel, and I've always felt that Republicans, or white people don't want to pay us, but they definitely don't want to pay anybody that they don't have to pay. And that the questions that the Republicans in the Judiciary Committee were asking were all kind of related to lineage. Ooh, how do we know? How do you know? What records do you have? We don't have any records. How are we going to find everybody? And so I actually took some sort of, or was a little optimistic about that, in that, you know, knowing that freedmen or lineage are at the time just saying descendants of chattel slavery, because lineage, it's the combination of tying a lineage to a specific harm. So what Chemerinsky, the dean that we saw speaking, was saying is that the Supreme Court says just because you didn't get this or that, you know, in the past, or, you know, somebody pulled you over, you know, or you were discriminated against, that's not a reason for special treatment, or that's not a reason, compelling reason for the state to intervene. When you tie that to this human atrocity of chattel enslavement, when you tie it to the atrocities of Jim Crow, that's when you have an event or harm base plus lineage equals stronger case. And we all know, particularly in North Carolina, which is where I'm at, many of you are all over the country, but in North Carolina, what was I going to say? I lost my thought, but suffice it to say, I will stop talking here because I lost my train of thought. I'll do that. So does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to answer the question, I think you said it though, but yeah, I don't think we support HR 40, because I think the new goal is you know, reparations is definitely, you know, we still fighting for reparations, but I don't think nobody sees any time frame on a reparations bill at the federal level, or even an executive. We don't see anything like that happening at this moment. That's kind of why we created the Office of Freedmen Affairs and the $15 billion platform, rather, because we look at that as a prologue, but then also we believe personally that we have a better opportunity at getting reparations at a state level and at a municipal level. You know, Freedmen UBI, right? You know, we have that. We think the state level and the municipal level is a faster opportunity, and an opportunity that will occur at a more, I think so. I think at a rapid speed, faster than the federal, because we just don't know what HR 40, the assembly, they have HR 1865, but you know, we just have to, it's already a reparations bill, which is HR 40. Most people don't support it. Again, we just don't really have the full answers on reparations in HR 40. So for me, it's kind of like, let's focus on the Office of Freedmen Affairs. Let's focus on the redevelopment and redistribution of wealth in the Black freedmen community. And we're still going to be fighting for reparations, of course, but this is kind of how we are able to get the bolster of our army to fight with us, because you can't just go to talking about reparations to people and people say, yo, I'm with you. That's not gonna, it's not what people think. I don't know what people.
Right.
So
it works for all of us on the Zoom call, but when you go to people, you know, in real life, and they're worried about their rent, or, you know,
it's like you playing with
food
people.
insecure or childcare expenses, you know, there's leaps and bounds before you get to reparations. And what I was rambling on about, my fear about what reparations has become, is a pander. So now it's the, you know, we got this message, the grassroots got it to the forefront, and now the message is being appropriated by people of color, by Black immigrants. But meanwhile, we have all of these budget surpluses in various states, and probably primarily where we are the largest population, because we were so egregiously discriminated against in terms of PPP money, COVID money. There's so much COVID learning loss, so much money sloshing around in not Nevada, unfortunately, Brand. Sorry. I don't know what y'all, oh, the gambling, the gambling revenues are down. But the point is there's so much COVID money sloshing around that has not been distributed to our communities. I just feel like, really all of that money belongs to us. Unfortunately, we're not as in strong a position to make the claim, but North Carolina has a $9 billion surplus. And we just had a death rate of 3 times the average in this state. The state refused to accept Obamacare. Our health disparity study said that everything was fucked up. And then the COVID came and we died like exponentially. And nothing's been done. So what the Freedmen brings together, it brings us a class. And then it brings us back to, oh yeah, we're freedmen. The 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment has equal protection clause. And if we look at all the disparity studies, we don't even need to do another reparations study ever again. Really, we've got the disparity studies and they will show us they will show that an Office of Freedmen of Affairs is justified in that we need to be getting moolah immediately. Those in our community, and we were actually having a discussion about that, because I was talking about this $9 billion surplus. And I said, you know what? We could take that $9 billion surplus and we could close the lineage wealth gap. If the lineage wealth gap is 350,000, we could take that $9 billion and close the lineage wealth gap for 27,514 people. And I said, so knowing that, how would we divide that money up? So everybody said, okay, yes, we would first, the bottom half, because that's who we're fighting for, because we're on a Zoom call. And then they said, well, it would be indigents. Okay, well, okay. And then people who are on assistance, and then I guess some sort of lottery system. The point is that we have to start thinking, we have to go after these resources. What we're talking about with the Office of Freedmen Affairs really is just holding states and municipalities accountable to their aspirational 10% goals. Virtually every state has a 10% goal.
We got 2 questions in the chat box.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'd like to know if I would actually, Ken, would you ask that question you can ask that question. I can read it out loud or you can ask it. You can come off. Good evening. Will the Freedmen's Organization work with ADOS founders Antonio Moore and Yvette Cardinal? Highly doubt it. Next. Ingrid Fields. This could be some part propaganda. I think we still have to think about defense to our claim. He says he did not know about the racial barriers. I'm not too familiar with that article, but I'm gonna check it out.
That was the father of the guy, the most recent person who was killed, but he's been they fled from the Congo, I believe it was, and they've been in the States for 25 years.
Now I know what you're talking about.
And so, that's just part of my, I've go to a lot of different spaces, and it's like, okay, I see where he, what his claim could be like. hey, I'm here and I should get this, reparations too. And, I mean, I see it, and because I wouldn't have noticed it, let's say, a year ago, because reparations wasn't really on my mind. But seeing that is a big topic now, and we have to be specific. It's just kind of awareness. And then as far as we're being on the offense, in some ways, I think we still have to think about what other types of defenses we need to have. So just kind of being awareness, that's all.
Nah, definitely. Now I'm gonna definitely check that out. That sounds like a good read. But yeah, good thing is in the chat, and everybody can definitely check it out on their own.
But but those people. So you're talking about the he's from the Congolese. The person, are you talking about the person who just killed by the police?
Yes.
So I mean, they have other means. They have their country. They could go to their embassy. They can go to the lawyer. I mean, discrimination, because you're discriminated against, doesn't mean that you get reparations. And that's why it's so important for people to understand atonement, the international model for reparations, the fact that we are a group that, because of our lineage of chattel enslavement, and when we came out of slavery into the freedman status, with that came a promise of 40 acres, which is valued at the low end of 8 trillion just in land alone. So our government made a decision after they shut down the Freedmen's Bureau prematurely to essentially exterminate us. That racial wealth gap, or that lineage, is essentially the cumulative effect of structural economic violence against us, which now has been cleverly cloaked in the guise of affirmative action, minority women in business programs, and just the disparity in distribution of services in general. And we have all the proof of that. We have decades and decades of proof. And so that's not being pulled over by the police. That's looking like them people that we got an issue with, and you get caught and your collateral damage. But his family will probably be able to sue the city and they will get recourse. It's not the same thing. Somebody being mean to you at work or whatever, it's not the same thing as what we are fighting for.
Excuse me, Dawn, I want to ask a question. Well, it's more than a question, it's a statement. I heard again on the news on yesterday about the area, and I think it's called Lowndes County, Alabama, where they have the sewage system that's causing problems, and they have all kind of conditions now. And they said 80% of those households have no adequate septic system. So we've heard about that before, because I remember Antonio mentioned it on his show a couple of years ago, and they're still going through the same things. So is it anything, I mean, as we as a group, I know we're fighting for reparations and we're fighting for, Freedmen's Office of Affairs, but is it, do you know anything about that? What's going on out there? Or if it's some way we could, I don't know, get together as a group to try to see if we can help that situation?
The short answers, of course, always yes. But what I'll say is that that is indicative of like Denmark, South Carolina, McDougal Terrace here in Durham. Anywhere you go in the other America, there's a Mason, Tennessee, there's a McDougal, there's an Alabama. And these incidences, which, you know, are related to redlining.
Right.
So these are all harms. So we are owed so much.
Yes.
We're owed, you could never repay the amount of money that is owed to us for a multitude of things like that, like economic, environmental violence.
Yes.
So I think we're at a point now, because all of this is so overwhelming, and it's overwhelming also, I find, because I feel like we have everything we need to win now. That we have this class, this freedmen class that the ancestors have brought back to us, you know, through an ironic vehicle. But be that as it may, we've heard a Jewish lawyer and scholar who has argued for the Supreme Court tell us that that is the best course. I think everybody has to kind of buckle down and do local work. We can't keep, you know, we can support other activists. You know, all of us are not in the, you know, all of us basically represent, you know, we're all across the country, literally. I think everybody here there might be two of us from North Carolina, but everybody else is from a different state. So I think it's like the house is on fire. And I think we have to buckle down in our states and embrace this freedmen history, the legacy that began with the promise. These states, particularly if you live in a state that seceded or was not part of the Union, but they entered into the Union, remained part of the Union on the premise that they would provide equal protection to the emancipated slaves. The 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. If we had Johnny Cochran's running around, every state in the Union where we're at, we have a case.
Yes, you're right.
Yes. Everything. And the problem is that people have not been articulating or framing it properly, whether ignorance or just ignorance, maliciously or whatever. So now we have all the tools we need, but do we have the people in place to fight? Do we have people ready to hit the ground? We were talking about that earlier. You know, do we have enough people to hit the ground running? I don't think we can spread ourselves as thin anymore nationally. I don't think HR 40. I think the Pan-Africanist movement, there's also another movement. It's called AU6. And it is a movement of African immigrants fighting for reparations in the United States, from the United States. They believe, they have a philosophy, their premise is that we, taken from them, are part of the 775 trillion that the global economy owes them. So they believe that the value placed on us should be marked as a credit on their books, and that their debt of Africa should be erased. Is that some double dipping for your ass or what?
Yeah, that's
crazy. Oh, first y'all gonna sell us, now you, okay. I think I got what?
Crazy.
But they literally believe that the figure is 775 trillion. They believe that their debt should be wiped clean. based on the value of the people stolen
Uh-huh.
and the assets. So we're part of that tally. And they say, well, in exchange for those people you took, you should erase this debt. And they say here in this country, their goal is to basically, I don't want to say take over, but
Yeah, that's what
look them up. All you gotta do is look them up. Uhuru is one of the groups. Uhuru, you ever heard of it?
Okay. Nah, I never heard of them. Because they have all that infrastructure money. How come they can't start with those areas? Well, we know why, because they don't care. But all that infrastructure money that they released, you know, billions of dollars. But if you're gonna speak about infrastructure, you should start with people's homes in their backyards and a
Yeah.
sewer system. That should be included.
Well, the thing is like, who are the advocates? Who is there to rally the people around the appropriate points? You can't say, well, I guess you can. You can go and say, well, Black and brown people have suffered. And then what happens? All the Latino people get the relief and we get 1%.
Right.
And I know we like to be big hearted, but I tell you what, I haven't been doing anything but looking at studies. And by the way, speaking of studies, California's Reparation Task Force did come out with the report. So if anybody wants to pull up the reparations, they are also calling for Office of Freedmen Affairs, Bureau.
Yes.
I mean, that's where we're at.
Right, it's definitely needed. We
need an enforcement agency that is able to count us, monitor, and assess penalties. And that's what I'm looking forward to exploring, how much power do states, I would imagine, they have the power to tax, so they have the power to assess penalties to businesses that don't meet this goal. They have the power to establish hard goals. These studies basically tell you that, you know, things are so extreme, you can actually have quotas. So I just believe that we have a multitude of sharp arrows in our quiver. We just got to get in position and make sure we're taking the right aim. And I don't think it's at HR 40.
No.
And national, I think we have to protect our communities. I think that I'm not going to get too far out because some people are guests, but I do believe that we have to dig in and get into our community. We owe it. We have a responsibility to share this information, particularly the lineage, and there is a sense of empowerment and entitlement that comes over you when you understand that how deep your roots are, many people don't even realize that they have family that fought in World War II or World War I. And they may hate war, but they sure are proud when they understand, wow, we really did fight in every war. I'm not just saying that. That's me too. That's my family.
Right.
And when I talk about freedmen, and then you go and you find a deposit slip, there are over 60,000 depositors, most of us, and you might even find a bill of sale for some flour or something that I found where one of your grandmothers went and got some provisions. And then you say, oh, it's not some abstract. That is me. This is my country. I am owed.
Yes.
I do feel like at the bare minimum, that is our responsibility. The only truth is your lineage, your line, know your great-great-grand, know where you come from. And then secondly, embrace this freedman status. And we just, we Black on the weekends, Black and African Americans on the weekend. But when we're pushing policy, we have to embrace this. It's there for us.
Hey.
It's there for us.
Let's see. Let's see.
Oh, so you guys, we're gonna be having a candidate forum next week. Khaleef, you want to tell them about that?
Yeah, real quick. Yeah, so we're gonna do
something.
Yeah, we're gonna do a forum May 4th. We're gonna have various candidates from around the country who are supporting the ideas that we're doing.
Espousing, that's the word.
Yeah. We're gonna have some people come on, and some people are reparationists, some people are reparationist candidates rather. Some candidates are candidates who support the Office of Freedmen Affairs, and quite frankly, I might have somebody come who may just be in support of a delineation and may still be one to learn, but we still need people to challenge them, kind of, sort of. And that's kind of like, the whole goal. I don't think everybody's gonna ever be pro reparations. I think people got to get that beaten into them, and I think that's a part of our job. So, you know what I'm saying? We gotta.
And we cannot let this reparations pact or pledge, they're out of pocket.
Yeah, we actually got to do this stuff. Like, we have to do this stuff.
They're getting out of pocket. And so, Khaleef, I'm on your page now with that. I don't appreciate those people even mouthing the R word. Like, take that word out your mouth. Right. I cannot. Did you guys see that picture?
No, which one are you talking about? Or which pack?
Yes, the reparations pack. They are actually backed. I followed through to their, however the internet talk is, whatever. I tracked it to somebody that was affiliated with them. And it is a group that is funding organizations that fight for reparations and LGBTQ rights. So you can look at that both two ways. You could say, or you could say, hey, okay, we love our LGBT family as well. So yeah, we'll take that grant money, give it over here. So play it how you want to play it, but the people, the opportunists are circling the reparations whole thing, and we see, and the reason why we're telling people reparation is not infrastructure, and that is because the mayors for reparations basically, and I see all this legislation. I tell you guys, there's so many bullets coming for us. So everybody is passing. So reparations is coming.
Yes.
Eventually, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this legislation is being put in place that allows, and this is the way they think it's coming, is being put in place to allow the states to accept money and then give grants to people. So they're anticipating getting our money and then giving it to us in the form of grants, because somehow you can't take federal, or the laws were such that you couldn't take federal money and hand it to people. You can't just like whatever. So these laws, they're popping up everywhere. I saw almost every, anyway, I saw several bills, North Carolina bills at least. But I think this is a trend because, politicians do things in groups and waves because they're not that bright. Except for you, Takesha, because you run it, girl. You go. But they're doing that, and they're doing, what's the other thing they're doing? So they're making it so they can get grants, but essentially the mayors for reparations anticipated this, so they formed this group with the mayors for reparations, but they want all this money to come through for infrastructure. And yeah, so we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing that actually quite a lot. And another reason why we've got to let the people know, and I'm feel very certain that all of this surplus money in all of these states, like I said, it's because we were deprived, that money was held back from us, and not by accident. They use our statistics, and that's what they were using to get all that COVID and learning loss money on our dead bodies. That's where all this money literally is coming from. And so I just really think that we have to get in place so that we can, I don't know.
Get some of the money.
I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Just by the blatancy of it all.
Yes.
It's
Dawn,
just,
I'm sorry. When you finish, Dawn, I just want to add one other thing, okay?
I never finish, so please.
When you okay. You mentioned the 14th Amendment, and we know that it was ratified July the 9th. Now, the 14th Amendment, it doesn't say life, liberty, and happiness. It uses the word property. It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So I don't know when that word property was changed to happiness. But in the 14th Amendment itself, Section 1 is property, life, liberty, or property. And I'm looking at the Constitution now.
So I don't understand. So what point are you making?
I'm making a point that they definitely deprived us of property. Because it seems like we even have a case with the 14th Amendment.
No, the 14th Amendment is our present day case, if you ask me. Nobody asked me, but I'm going to say it. I don't have a law degree, but I should have one. And if I wasn't so old, I'd go get a law degree.
You're not too old.
I believe that the Equal Protection Clause, you know what? I'm certain of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're so blatant with it. They have a legal case laid out in each disparity study. I just cannot believe it. It's just mind blowing. I'm so deep in the weeds and the details. It might be above y'all because it is very much in the weeds, but the fact that they have a whole legal case laid out on why and how, it's just strange. Mm-hmm. It's just like when I went and I was organizing down in South Carolina and I read the comprehensive plan. Like every city and town has a comprehensive plan, and it is basically their 20-year business plan. It says where they're going to prioritize, where they're going to spend money, where they're going to build. I read the plan, and after I read it, I realized it was basically a plan for ethnocide. It literally says right there, wherever Black people are, we will not build.
Wow.
Wherever Black people are, there will be no schools. Wherever Black people are, there will be no economic hub. There will be no grocery store. There will be no infrastructure. But over here is where we will build a hub, economic hub. Over here is where we will build hospitals, over here. And then we look at the census and we see since 2010, a 365% increase in the Latino population.
Yes.
And we see a 1,000 person waiting list on Section 8 in an area that used to be like 80% Black. Mm-hmm. Now we have a 3,400 unit housing shortage, and we have a whole demographic of young Black Americans who, if they wanted to do as normal people do and go off and form their own households, they would literally have to leave. That's what you call displacement.
Yes.
But here's the kicker. They've known about this. That's what kills me.
Yeah, it's planned, pre-planned, and
it's pre-planned.
Everything, right.
No, literally on paper.
Yes.
To me, it just blows my mind. I mean, because that's what it is. I mean, and just like the Office of New Americans, you know, like, King Carter likes to tell us how they literally say that Chicago is expecting 100,000 labor shortfall in the future. Therefore, we are, and they literally say this, we are going to invest in the children of our immigrant population to fill those jobs of the future. Like, forget about you Negroes, supposedly black on black crime. And that Office of New Americans, those are everywhere. So that's the other justification.
Yeah.
The latest bastardization of the Freedmen's Bureau. So
yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah, but we like to
focus
and keep moving. And well, I'll tell you some more things what we plan and trying to see if we can get a meeting with the mayor.
Good.
Yeah, contact his office. Someone from the office. So working on that. I'll let you know if that happens. All right.
All right. Good.
Before it happens, so maybe because hopefully I'm believing that maybe he would do something. OFA. Maybe we can get.
If you come to him, I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Because of the legal permit, I think half of our battle has been including everybody in and not really knowing how to team up properly. But I really do believe that, like, for instance, we talking about Virginia's black Republican. We have a black lieutenant Republican governor in North Carolina as well. And I was just listening to him the other day, and I was like, you know what? He's pushing back against CRT, and he thinks there's an agenda. I think he would go for an American Freedmen curriculum.
He probably, yes, if he's pushing back on the CRT.
And that's why we came up with that as a policy, because we wanted another protection. Is somebody was talking about be on defense. Amaru was a lead on that policy. AfroPic, American Freedmen exiting the two-party system, but basically talking about where was I going with that? We were talking about the AfroPic and the
education. You was speaking about the. Maybe the mayor would.
The fact that we're talking about Reconstruction. What we want to focus on is the period from 1870 to 1940, the 50,000 patents. The free people, the period prior to the Civil War, were free people of color. Were not only landowners and voters, but they were also always in danger of re-enslavement. And they were re-enslaved, but they were also fighting for our freedom alongside of us. And so then we get into the Reconstruction. So of course we talk about slavery, whatever. But then we talk about the Reconstruction period. In North Carolina in 1866, they had a 3-day Freedmen's Convention. Brilliant in the minutes and everything. And you can imagine starting from there, the 50,000 patents, then focus on the Revolutionary War, the Declaration of Independence, which we were there. Obviously the Civil War, but then the War of 1812. And the Indian Wars, where we were Buffalo soldiers. And that would be like your setup, because that 50,000 patents, we basically invented everything.
Yes, that's right.
So it serves a purpose of delineation. You can't have liberation if you are a race. So we have to have that history component. So if we push with that, we don't want to talk about slavery. We want to talk about our accomplishment, because we want everybody to understand that you owe us.
Yes.
You owe us not just because of free labor, which once we became citizens, then we were subject to inheritance laws. So they do, in fact, owe us the money from our deceased family, but even more so from genocide that began with the Black Codes. That was the beginning of the march toward ethnocide and genocide. So that is illegal, and that we are owed reparations and restitution for. So it all comes back together. Freedmen, we need protection, we need enforcement, we need delineation, education. Tramel, how do you get that picture? Why you got a picture of Jamin?
I don't.
Mason.
Which I don't know. It's in the.
It's Jamel Redden.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that popped up.
You don't know? Oh,
but you know Jamin.
I don't know.
I don't know how that popped up.
Really? He can unmute yourself, Jamel.
Who's Tramel?
Yeah.
No, this is me, y'all.
That's funny. You got
Who is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how that popped up. I didn't even click on anything.
Oh, that's Jamel right there.
There's Tramel. That's Jamin.
Website.
Jamin.
Yes,
Anyway.
ma'am.
Okay.
Did anyone else have anything to add? I think I'm about to go plug in. But I will talk. So.
Okay, this is Ingrid. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, are you available or interested in media, or is that not the time for this? And the reason I say is because I'm taking notes, and I've talked to people that I know, but I think you explaining, the push for the Freedmen Bureau, you can do that. And
like we want to talk about it. Totally. If people want to talk to us, we want to talk to them.
Okay, well, I'll do what I can to try and set you up some kind of way.
Yeah, me and Khaleef and Amaruski.
Okay, is that name on here? Oh, I see. Ooh.
But Khaleef is he's the lieutenant.
Okay.
Amaru's the sergeant.
Okay, so I'll try and work on trying to do something with that. And so then the next question is just kind of next steps.
The next step.
Yeah, so like now I'm aware more about trying to get let's say
what state are you in?
I'm in Washington State.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, look, do you know Jamin?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Jamin, perfect, excellent. See, the ancestors are with us. Ingrid, Jamin, who says Tramel, but he's a light-skinned guy with the bald head, not the one who's moving, but the one with the picture.
Right,
Jamin,
right.
Ingrid is in Washington State. You were the two I wanted to hook up together. Excellent.
Okay. Great.
So every Sunday, 4:00, organizer meeting, be there, be square. So we'll get y'all situated.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get the numbers. We'll get connected. So perfect. Yeah, I definitely wanted you to. So now I look successful. Thank you. I look successful.
You already successful. Come on.
You're a champ. You're a star.
All right.
Anybody else have anything else? It's 9:00, and I thought this was going to be a short meeting, but you know what? It's good and it's necessary for us to get together and have these discussions.
Right. So Ingrid, I'm just wondering, I'm out here, Bremerton, Port Orchard, Washington. Where are you located about?
I'm in Tacoma.
Okay. So are you involved with the Pierce County Black Collective?
I am not.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
didn't
Are
know
you,
about it.
Jamin? I'm still confused about that. I get the
Yeah,
email.
they just got me in there today. So yes, I am definitely involved with them. I think they meet on
Saturdays,
Saturday mornings, or
8:30.
Saturday morning, 10:30, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. Well, I will now dub you and Ingrid as my proxy. And I will leave it to y'all on your time zone to attend those meetings. So that's good. Well, then it'll probably be a good idea for Khaleef and I then to like get together with you and Ingrid and then get y'all popping off.
Right on.
Man, how you got my picture? Or you got my name up under your picture.
I know that is so weird.
I know. Yeah, I don't.
You see it?
That's wild. All I did was say join the meeting.
You see it though?
Huh?
You
What,
see
Sam?
You see my name under your picture?
Hold on. Let me get back out and lower my hand. And then, oh, whoa, yeah, that does say you my dude and stuff, but I like my name, homie.
That's so weird. All right. Well, does anybody have anything else they would like to ask, add, vent?
Yeah, this is for my folks on the East Coast. If anybody is in the South Carolina area, I'm not. I'm in Kentucky. It's gonna be a 7-mile, 2-minute drive to South Carolina. But what we want to do is we're aiming to rain on James Clyburn's parade with his fish fry. You know, do a little demonstrating out there. So if anybody's on the East Coast is willing to make that ride, put some boots on the ground, just let me know. We'll formulate a plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
You got somebody out there running against Clyburn, right?
Marcel Dixon.
Yes, Marcel.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys support Marcel?
Huh?
Are the guys out there supporting Marcel on the call here?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yes.
Yeah. We definitely back to Marcel against Clyburn. You know, he's a crap.
Yeah,
Just made a recent post talking about he still ain't forgot about police accountability. So you know, it's getting. I know, right?
Oh, so it's gonna be a trend. So we got the 51 billion from the guy in Philly. So now what? Everybody's gonna be coming out with hundreds of billions.
Right. From no money that they said they didn't have, but now they're gonna start coming out with something.
Did I tell y'all on this call about Carol Mosley Braun, the black woman who is responsible for the 13-year-olds being tried as adults? Remember her? She was the first black woman senator, and she is the one that convinced Biden. It's always us. It's always the ones you love. But can you believe that? She is,
what's her lineage?
She got Biden. I pulled an old article, and she talked to him, wanted it put into the crime bill, and Biden was like leery of incarcerating youth with adults. And she was like, all right, well, if I don't get it in this time, I'm definitely going to get it in next time. And the article was written back then. So it talked about how she thought people would be enthusiastic given the tough on crime. You know, Democrats were trying to outdo each other on being tough on crime, with us as the sacrificial lambs as usual. All right, I'm triggering myself.
Yeah, that's really, really sickening to hear. I just wanted to add before we left that I did find some information or some language about children in the foster care system that I wanted to add to my list of demands here in our state. There's a lot of language out there about Native American tribes and how they have laws in place. So
Protect children
as well.
Well, that's good. I hope, yeah, you've got, I don't know, like I said, I think people are surprised at how not difficult it is to get at least a meeting with your official, your elected officials. And I don't know, you might be surprised because obviously, we are dealing with data and it's really hard to ignore the facts that we be coming with. So we'll see. We got a lot to fight against. I tell you, like I said, with these new groups glomming on to reparations to muddy the waters. So we've got people of color now jumping on the bandwagon at the same time. Now we got, the Democrats. Here they come with the tough on crime bullshit. I just don't know, y'all. I don't know. I swear my head hurts. I have a headache now. So that means the meeting's over.
Okay, you'll enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
All right. Peace and reparations, everyone.
Stay strong, everybody.
Reparations, yes.
4:00 on Sundays, our weekly meeting.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
All right, Don.
Wait, let's suspupiate. So earlier we were suspupiate cac dung jug tut. We were speaking tut. So yeah, that's always uplifting. So
yep.
Waxite tut has tut a tut. I
translate.
I squirrelo susayak. Gug squirrel the bubbyaki.
Watch that say that. I'll see y'all later.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Hope to see you next week and next month. Next community update with concerned Black American citizens. Yeah, thank you, Khaleef. You're the best. Amaru, BFF.
You too.
Keisha, about to be in office, making changes. Bran, about to make big changes in Nevada. Ingrid, about to get it popping. Jamel, see ya. I'm waiting to see you at my meetings on Sundays. Evelyn, yes. Thank you for coming. All righty, everybody. Keep it easy and